Hi everyone, my name is Tishka. I'm passionate about mental health advocacy, I'm active in peer support, and I'm also a trauma informed yoga practitioner. Since starting this channel back in 2019, the one project I really wanted to do was to collaborate with a psychologist and have a non judgmental conversation about mental health. And what better day to create this meaningful project than on the World Mental Health Day? I'm so happy this is finally happening. So today joining me in this video is the founder of the Safe Room, a mental health organization which provides holistic mental health both offline and online in Bangalore. She's a queer affirmative trauma informed psychotherapist with over 6 years of experience in the field of mental health. And she has been doing an incredible work in this field. So, Tanvi Matu.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanvi and I'm very glad to be joining you in this YouTube channel for World Mental Health Day. Thank you for inviting.
So, Tanvi, can you tell us more about your practice and why mental health awareness is so important in the first place?
So, a little bit about my practice at the Safe Room. We provide holistic, comprehensive services for mental health, be it individual therapy, couple therapy. We also organize events and workshops on mental health, and we do some tie ups with mental health for your organization. But most of our services, all of our services, are rooted in safety to create that safe space for you, to have a non judgment safe space where you feel comfortable and we can work together in your journey towards better mental health. I feel mental health awareness is taking up so much more space than it used to. But it's so important even now because the more we are able to talk about these things, the more we don't ignore those who are actually suffering in silence. We don't have to do that. And creating this awareness helps people to reach out for support, to ask for help when they need it. You won't ignore a fractured knee. So, why should you also ignore a person who's going through depression or is feeling anxious, has gone through trauma?
Agree. Um, but I have noticed that there's still a lot of stigma, even when people are openly talking about it. So, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think you're so right about this. When I started on the field 6 years ago, things looked so much different back then as they do today. People are talking more about the personal journeys, about mental health, and more through therapists on social media channels. But it doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. I was actually looking through some stats to quote on our episode, and ridiculously, I found no research going back to 10 years ago. That was the last research I found. So we don't even know what's happening in the mental health field right now. How do we even cater to it? People still isolate people going through mental health issues, call them crazy, call them weak. They are still alienated from our community and they don't get the help they need. The research back then I was mentioning actually said that in 2015-16, that 80% treatment gap is there in India for common mental health issues. So, how are we really doing with it today?
Okay. That's quite interesting, but at the same time, I would say quite heartbreaking also because with personal experience, I could tell you that, yeah, I can relate to that statistics. And I wish that I would feel more comfortable in having conversations like this with people, even in my family. But as you said, yeah, it's still a stigma. So, what are some of the major inhibitions that people have?
Yeah,
What do you think?
it's still so difficult to ask for help sometimes. People think that, okay, man, there's been years and years of conditioning of people who feel not asked to share things. घर की बातें घर में रहनी चाहिए. People feel that I'm weak, maybe I should be able to do things by myself. Why ask for help? What will talking even solve? What things have to happen have happened. What will it change? And it also makes people feel, oh, people will see me in a different light. I think these really sum up a lot of the illusions people have about reaching for help.
Yeah, I think I have seen that too. So agree with you. So what do you think helps people break through this stigma? And I have a couple of more add-on questions. And what do you think can help them feel more comfortable when they're seeking help? Or when should they actually be seeking help? How do you know that?
Yeah.
And lastly, like, do you think there's a particular kind of approach that would help them?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So there's a researcher called Brené Brown, and she said some very interesting things about how there are three things that keep shame alive. It says secrecy, silence, and judgment. I think the same applies for mental health field as well. So if people speak up about their experiences and they can be compassionate, they can not keep things like an hush hush affair. I think we will be able to break a lot of stigmas for this, and people can actually ask for help, have a community, know that they're not alone, and they don't have to do everything by themselves. Actually, get support.
I love that. In fact, yeah, I think I mentioned to you I was in a support group, so I felt that connection there,
Yeah.
where people were comfortable in talking about what they were going through. In fact, I'm so glad you brought up Brené Brown. I have one of her books.
Yeah.
I want to read more of her books, and I think she studied shame. So
She did.
that was very interesting to me. I thought I'll bring it up in the podcast. So, yeah, any particular kind of therapeutic approach you feel they should go for, or like, does it really matter as long as they are seeking help? And also, like, should they actually seek?
When should a person go for help? I think it can be any time. You don't have to wait for an emergency stop button when everything comes to a halt and you're not to actually access help. It's obviously so much better when you go before it hits that peak moment of your life. But some things that really help you know that you should maybe think about asking for help now is when your sleep gets messed up and you have some lot of body pains that are not being tested actually. And all the tests say nothing, there's nothing wrong with your body, everything is fine, and you're feeling very low and nothing is seeming to be able to connect with you. No joy, no pleasure. You just feel very flat. And all people, everything seems great, but something just feels wrong. I think that's a good time to think about therapy too. Approach, I would say there's so many different approaches, and there's no right and wrong way. It just matters how a person connects with it and how they connect with the therapist, most importantly. So I feel all these approaches are like different paths you take to reach the same destination. Research says that the most important thing, what makes progress happen in therapy, is the therapeutic alliance, the relationship between the client and the therapist. So that is the most important factor, something I gladly second with all my experience. So no matter what approach, as long as you feel safe, understood, and seen by a therapist, it'll work.
When I was seeking therapy the first time I went, that's so uncomfortable because
Yeah.
the therapist was just looking at me while I spoke and absolute focus space, no expression whatsoever. And then when the session was done, I was just asked to make the payment and leave. So I felt awkward. So like that, I tried a couple of times until I finally found a therapist who was helping me throughout my entire recovery process. So I agree that the relationship between the client and the therapist is the most important. Like that's how you start opening up, going deeper into your problems. Okay. So if someone is considering therapy for the first time, what can they expect in a session? And what do you think someone should do if, like, in certain situations, if it's not working out, that the therapy, they're not feeling like they're making progress in that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a very important question because now that people are thinking about accessing therapy, they don't know, okay, how do I select a therapist? I think it's important to know the qualifications of a therapist. You won't believe the number of people in the field who are not qualified and there are not enough regulations for the same. So find out their qualifications, ask them, just be transparent about your questions for them. Ask them if they have in therapy supervision themselves. I think it's highly important if they are doing their work themselves. Know about the cancellation policy, see what kind of fee fits you and your budget because therapy should not add more financial worry than anxiety. So ask about the frequency of sessions and if they have relevant experience working in the issues that you want to, and how do they see therapy? How do they approach it? People expect therapy to be very scary. I mean, it is when you're opening up to a stranger, right? But I hope people can know that it's a completely safe, non-judgmental space. And we are, as therapists, trying to just make you feel comfortable. We will not give you advice, yeah, "Acha, this is what you should do, this is how you should be, this is the right way." It's really not about that. We are just trying to understand your issues together as a team, collaborating with it, understanding what is going to work for you, what is not working for you, what is the root cause, how can we cope with things in a much healthier way. And we really do care. It's not just transactional. We care a lot about our clients. We think about you even outside of sessions. And it's therapy can be about wanting to be more assertive, how to draw boundaries, how to explore neurodivergence, how to say no when you want to, how to mm, ask for more help or take care of yourself, be better in a relationship, deal with burnout in a workspace, anything and everything, really.
I think a lot of things that you still will be able to comfortably share with a therapist than your own family members, even your parents. In fact, sometimes your parents will give you a lot of advice or
Yeah.
suggestions, which maybe you're not looking for. Maybe you're just looking for someone to hear your issues and not give unsolicited advice. So I think
Yeah.
that way therapy can be especially beneficial.
Yeah. I feel like both things are important.
Yeah.
Sharing those things with your loved ones is also important. Sharing this with your therapist can also be important, but both सबकी अपनी अपनी जगह होती है.
Correct, absolutely. So, Tanvi, how does online and offline therapy differ, or do you recommend one over the other?
Mm, I actually don't. I think again, it comes back to what your preference is. Initially, in my experience, I worked in the clinic setting, in person sessions, and I've also worked offline, online now with clients, and both work out great. So, there's really no one right way. So, if you're more comfortable opening up from a clinic setting to see your therapist in person, absolutely great. The thing about online is it kind of removes those boundaries, geographical settings. So you can see a therapist who's also in Bombay. You can see a therapist who is somewhere else completely altogether, and it can just be about what you're looking from a therapist, not about how just close they are located to you.
I think that also broadens your options, and yeah, I think that's for some people that would work out better.
Yeah.
People often say things like, "Oh, this is such a depressing color," or they use OCD for perfectionism. And something that I've recently noticed, I'm guessing you have been noticing too, just blue. So,
Yeah.
in fact, trauma has become the word of the decade. How do you, what do you think about it as a psychologist, and what risk do you think comes with misusing these terms? And basically, what do you
Yeah.
have to say about such a trend?
Mm, I do notice this trend, and you're so right, it happens so much, and so many people around me still do it. And it kind of saddens me because it makes me feel that the mental health awareness is not there as much. People don't understand what OCD is. They still think it's just about cleanliness. People still don't understand what depression is because these are all very debilitating experiences. So what it does is it invalidates the person's experience of actually going through these things. It makes them feel like, oh, is it supposed to be this easy? And I think I understand people don't want to hurt other people, but you are making it a punchline, and it's really anything but that. It's a very difficult experience.
I think I can totally relate to it because I've personally experienced this in my life. And
Yeah.
previously, I was also unaware when I was not a part of this field or studying about mental health. I didn't even realize I have mental health issues or something. That is the time I used to also say that, oh, I have OCD for this is something like that. And later on, I realized, oh shit, I have OCD. And it's not perfectionism, it's more of like, it's a thought that you cannot get over, and it's not just about cleanliness.
Yeah.
It can be multiple times checking the lock before you're leaving.
Yes.
And if you've made, so suppose if I've made a mistake once of not, locking it, and I come back home and I realize, oh shit, the lock was, I haven't locked it. Then from then onwards, I would continuously check it or ask my husband to like check if I have locked. So that's when I realized that there are different forms of OCD also. So I think, yeah, it's more about being informed and learning more about these things to be educated. So that's where this sort of misunderstanding reduces.
Yeah, like you won't also joke about cancer, right? I rarely hear that because people take it seriously, but these things are just not taken seriously.
Great. Okay. So if someone has a friend or family members who are struggling with mental health, what's the best way they can support them without overstepping? And what roles do educators and school play in supporting the students' mental
I'm so glad you asked me that because I don't think therapy healing is just limited in that way because only therapists cannot heal. It's a lot more about the surroundings you're in, the environment you're in, the kind of friends you are around. So, how they support you is also so important. If a loved one you know is experiencing something, reach out to them. Make time for them. Check in with them. Don't isolate them. Don't judge them. Don't guilt trip them into doing something that you think is right. They probably know what is right and what is not right for them. So just allow them to have that space and be there. A lot of people feel like, okay, अब मैं क्या ही बोलूँगी? What do I even say? And it's not about having the perfect things to say. Just being there matters. And knowing that they have a person who really cares about them, it'll make a world of a difference. As an educator or teacher, school space is so important. They shape us, and we spend so many hours in our day, every day for 12 years. We're there. Of course, it shapes us. And if, as a teacher educator, you notice a student not doing well, not wanting to study, not turning in an assignment, don't shame them in front of everybody. It leaves a lasting impression. It will stay with them forever. Gently ask them, be curious about their experience. And maybe what we can also do is that instead of placing labels on them, just ask, try to understand. You won't believe the number of people who are labeled as lazy when in fact they just have ADHD. And nobody sat with them to figure out, okay, what is really happening for you. So, yeah, it's so important.
And I've also noticed the education system is not designed for people like us, I would say,
Yeah.
people who are neurodivergent, because they there's a particular set of things, and that is supposed to be followed for everyone, no
Yeah.
matter who you are or what your age. Like for 12 years, this is how you do things. And I also have had a discussion about this with my husband, that the ranking system is so like bad in my opinion.
Yeah.
It forces you. So if suppose you're not first, maybe you come on the list of 30 or somewhere 12th or 15, then you feel like, oh, maybe I've not done, like great,
Yeah.
even when you've given your best.
Yeah, and it defines a person again. Like, oh, I'm just average. Average just means most people. It's okay. You have to always strive to be above average. And just knowing you're one, number two, number three, that's just a part of who you are. That's it.
Yeah, and it's like people just forget after three. Like,
Yeah.
that's there. And also, even if I didn't want to bring it up, I didn't want to bring a lot of personal things on the video. But I think I've also realized that you will be very lucky if you find a good teacher or educator who understands this mental
Yeah.
health stuff. Because unfortunately, in my school experience, I feel like they traumatized me even further with the kind of experiences I had. They, some teachers would know that there are, personal problems that I have at home, but I promise you, none of them even tried to be a little bit curious. They were
Yeah.
mostly judgmental, very manipulative, and they made sure that my life is even worse. Because of that, I used to love studying, but because of that, I had a very hard time focusing, or I faced a lot of memory issues. Um, so I wasn't able to remember a lot of things. I would dissociate. So I feel even if things weren't great at home, if I had a supportive teacher, at least I would have loved studying more,
Yeah.
or learning more. So I do feel that, especially when it comes to schools and teachers, it should be more, if not trauma informed, but at least more mental health awareness should be there.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Tushka. You're so right about that. How would life be when you know there's another person in your corner rooting for you, trying to understand you, trying to be there for you?
In fact, I just remembered a news. I don't know which college was this, but they were trying to prevent suicide prevention. They were trying to prevent suicide in the colleges.
Yeah.
And you would think, wow, that's wonderful. But you know what they did to do that? They removed ceiling fans.
Yeah.
So
I've
I feel like that's how you know how much that gap you were talking about,
Yeah.
is there in people lacking the knowledge or understanding of how mental health just in general works.
Yes.
There's also a growing number of cases where people are now relying on tools like ChatGPT, because therapy is sometimes costly, or
Yeah.
due to that stigma, and they are carrying that shame. So I personally think that obviously, like, an AI tool can never replace humans, but it also is like googling symptoms. Like, if we face some problem, we google symptoms.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a temporary relief, but it's always better to seek professional help. So what is your take on this? What do you think are potential risks in sharing your personal things with ChatGPT?
Yeah, as therapists, we are bound by confidentiality. ChatGPT is not. So your information is out there. There's no safety around it. Internet is not a safe place at all. What it also does is it creates a kind of dependency and not empowerment, which is what therapy does. It is very mindful of that. With ChatGPT, there have been many, many cases where people were talking about dying by suicide, and ChatGPT did not record it, did not report it. They simply encouraged the person to die, and deaths could have been prevented. It did not need to happen. As therapists, we have a lot of ethicalities around this. We would work together with the client, with the support system to each other. Okay, what? ChatGPT cannot do that. So we have to really be careful when we're talking to ChatGPT. What are the issues in to again, it cannot replace human connection, as we said. You know how we talked earlier about the therapist client relationship being the most important factor in making progress, and this human connection is so important. We always need someone to be there for us, and ChatGPT cannot do that, while eating food, while going out. Solitude is great, it's important, but you also need people. Human beings are not meant to be isolated. We're not an island.
I agree with you, because a lot of people can, I'm sure, relate to what it felt like during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We were shut in our houses and it was so suffocating. Even if we had all sort of like Instagram and all of that back then was doing reels, was going viral, we still needed that human connection. So, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I definitely think it cannot replace humans, but it is becoming dangerous that people can become so comfortable with sharing such personal things with
Yeah.
some tool they don't know a lot about.
Yeah. I think it's also uh, preventing vulnerability. So we are not opening up to each other. When we meet another person, we're like, yeah, I'm fine, what's up, okay. But we're actually talking about our personal issues with an AI agent, a chat box. So that is probably not a good look in society.
And in fact, I think I don't remember who I was having this discussion with, but your data can be used to create
Yes.
movies, or like if someone is trying to come up with, for example, an idea for their video or something like that, they might use this as a reference, your own personal story as a reference for that. So it is quite risky, I feel.
Yeah.
Lastly, for anyone who's unable to afford therapy, or they have that, little shame that they'll be judged in society or by their family members, do you want to recommend any affordable resources that they can turn to?
So, you are right, Prishka. Therapy is not cheap, and I agree with you. But I wish this realization even came to me when I was younger. It's an important investment in yourself. Um, when was the last time you went out for coffee, or even a cup of coffee or matcha costs a bomb these days? You can save a little bit of it and put it into therapy, something that you are investing in company with. But yes, as doctors, even therapists have different fee ranges. Different therapists offer different fee ranges. And some therapists also have something called the sliding scale, which means that if somebody is going through financial difficulties and you want access therapy, they have limited slots which are lower. And you can also access that. So look for therapists who offer pro bono therapy, sliding scale therapy, and yeah, it's not something that is completely inaccessible. You can still find therapists with a lower fee range. There are resources also where people who are not completely comfortable yet. There are a lot of great apps like Finch and like Headspace, which help people do self care better, also get productive, do some things that are difficult with executive functioning. And I've noticed a lot of clients benefit with it actually.
Okay. I think I completely agree with you. It's about priority.
Yeah.
I have seen where people, like long back, I had a friend, they were able to spend money when they wanted to buy something beautiful, some outfit, but at the same time, they went to a bakery and they spotted little expensive, like their charges were a little high, and they said, "Oh, this is so expensive." But they were like they were more comfortable spending that much for their outfit. So I guess it's about priority. And in one of my videos on YouTube that I posted, I mentioned how therapists can be like your fitness trainer. I thought that's a very easily understandable comparison. That for your mental health, they will obviously not solve all your problems, but they train you to solve your problems
Yeah.
on your own. So personally, I have learned a lot of coping skills through my therapist, and so because of that, I was able to reduce the number of times also that I was going for therapy. So that was also helpful. And what was the second? Oh, apps. Yeah, coming to apps that you mentioned, Headspace is something I love. Even if I try to keep like follow digital minimalism, but yeah, Headspace is one of those apps that helped me to at least build a habit of keeping my mind, empty for some time, or just like meditating, be by myself. So that's a great app for anyone who would be interested. So thank you so much, Tanit, for being here. We learned so much about therapy and how you can seek help, and what are the factors that you start noticing, and that's when you realize you need to go to therapy. And in general, like there was a lot about mental health that I learned from you today. So we also learned that the risk of casually misusing mental health terms are quite risky. And we also got a lot of tips on how we can access these resources and get help when it comes to our mental health. I hope you found this video helpful. You can share it with anyone who you think might find it beneficial. And yeah, I hope you realize that it's really important to talk about mental health openly and without any judgment. So we hope that on this World Mental Health Day, this video sparks more such conversations. And most importantly, if you're struggling, know that you're not alone. There are professionals and support groups and even your friends who you can reach out for help. And if you want to reach out to the Safe Room, I'll leave the details in the description box. She has a website and she even has a social media handle. So thanks, Tanvi, for being here again.
Thank you for having me.